Hello there. Got a nice home? Then get prepared to share it with a Hamas member or supporter. In short, the UK does not need to import more pro-Palestine marchers, especially when they originate from the heavily pro-Hamas Gaza Strip. But Labour has a plan to bring loads of them over here. Hamas is a proscribed terrorist organisation here in the UK, so how are we going to screen out the pro-Hamas ones among them? If certain lefty politicians had their way, they would just open our borders to let them all in, come what may. Labour MP Sam Tarry, for example.
That we need to consider a scheme very similar to one that has been meaning that so many Ukrainians have been welcomed into our country, showing actually that people in Britain do have a great deal of compassion for their fellow humans, that they understood and see just the savage butchery going on in Ukraine. And in the same way, people in my community would welcome to their homes Palestinians, even just for a temporary period, who need the shelter of our nation and our people.
Sam Tarry, a beacon of woke naivety and virtue signalling. I wonder how many Hamas terrorists that were actively involved on October the 7th will be hoping to take advantage of a scheme like that before the IDF rounds them up. Remember that the Ukraine scheme involved people in the UK taking refugees into their own homes. Israel was attacked by Hamas, based mainly in Gaza, and we're expected to take potential terrorists, however slim the risk the leftists think there is, into our homes. Then keep them here for about 3 years, with the intent of sending them back once the situation in Gaza has settled. In my humble opinion, once they're in, they would stay. No future Labour government or court would ever send them back, ever. Whatever they got up to here. And they will, of course, need permanent accommodation by then. Now, I listened to Tarry and I didn't get any real indication that he was seeking any rigorous type of vetting for those allowed into the UK. And he seemed oblivious to the fact that countries like Egypt and Jordan have refused to take any Gaza refugees because of the risk of a large number of Hamas terrorists getting into their countries and destabilising the region further. They're the ones that are kettling the people of Gaza in, with Egypt building a huge wall between itself and Gaza. Both the Egyptian and Jordanian governments know the risk and are extremely aware of exactly what it is that Israel is dealing with right now. Our lefty woke politicians, blinkered by their virtue signalling, seem blissfully unaware of any of this. And the only Gaza refugees given any sanctuary at all are the ones that control all the diverted billions of aid money and donations, with Qatar and now Turkey stepping up to the plate to offer them sanctuary. But what of the ordinary Gazans? Well, their fate is to be the Hamas human shields. And what should worry us is that there is no uprising against Hamas within Gaza. Does that indicate a high level of support for Hamas amongst the Gaza population? Will Tarry's new scheme become a Homes for Hamas scheme, as Reform UK MP Lee Anderson suggested on Twitter, now known as X? And the overly loud and overly publicised pro-Palestine types in places like the UK are fully behind that false Israel genocide of Gaza narrative. A narrative that puts forward the concept that Hamas terrorists are the victims. And no one ever mentions that the combined Hamas and Hezbollah rocket attacks on Israeli civilian areas has led to the displacement of 135,000 Israelis away from their homes to safer zones within their own country. The very fact that so many Israeli homes have safe rooms built into them, as required by law since 1992, over 30 years ago in pursuit of civil defence to protect the people from the incessant rocket attacks, also seems to have passed many people by. The regulations required the inclusion of a residential protected room, a communal protected space, or an institutional protected space in every newly constructed building, says Business Insider. Living in fear of rocket attacks for many decades, to the point that they all have to have safe rooms. Sickening. And the rockets come mainly from a small area of the world called Gaza, where Hamas rules. But whose people, claims lefty MP Sam Tarry, are all doctors and academics and highly educated. And they should all instantly be allowed to work here, Tarry said. I have to wonder how true that all is, given that they voted for the brutal Hamas regime to rule over them in 2007 and haven't insisted on another election since. Palestinian doctors working in our NHS, no doubt. Wonder how safe Jewish patients would feel. Once this cadre of disastrous Labour MPs are in place, with Keir Starmer at the helm, with a huge majority, we will see the Jewish community feeling forced out of the UK, leaving before they are pushed. The Labour government recognising the state of Palestine, even though it is not defined. But the pro-Palestine mob will take that as meaning the de facto destruction of Israel. And Labour will enact a full-on blasphemy law for their preferred demographic. Just compare that to what's going on in the Netherlands right now, where Geert Wilders has managed to cobble a coalition government together. I hear it's on the understanding that he won't be Prime Minister, even though the numbers suggest he should be, but that bit is just a rumour at the moment. But the four main parties involved have agreed to a couple of rather surprising measures. The first is that they will look at moving their embassy in Israel from Tel Aviv into Jerusalem. That's one big vote for Israel. Not only that, the Times of Israel says, a separate clause states that the Holocaust will be included in the integration exam that anyone seeking Dutch citizenship needs to pass. That clause is one of several outlining a tougher immigration policy for the Netherlands. And further, they will be working for the Netherlands to have an opt-out where the EU policy on making all member states accept their quota of asylum seekers is concerned. Something that will put them at direct loggerheads with the nation-destroying European Union. Compare that to the damp rag Tories and the wet woke Labour Party. Now the Eurocrats are going to be bricking it right up to and after the June European parliamentary elections. They fear a massive swing to the right at the heart of their faux democracy. And I think that's exactly what we'll see. It is then that the true undemocratic nature of the EU will fully rear its ugly head. Because those new right-of-centre parliamentarians will find they have no real power at all. The only power MEPs have is to take the money and rubber stamp the Commission's new laws. And that, over our previous decades of EU membership, has seeped into Whitehall, where politicians do as they are advised and nothing else. Remember, the country gave the Tories an 80-seat majority to get certain things done, and they totally failed. Our democracy is broken, probably now beyond repair, and that is being used against us by the likes of the pro-Palestine rabble.